Okay, how's that?
Give it a second.
Yep.
There we go.
There we go. Cool. Thanks so much for the feedback. Now that I see my speaker, my mic is actually working. Sweet. Okay. Now, those at home for the final time, and those on Discord, I apologize for the fourth time. This is about how to create good narratives. And for me, I've studied a couple different types of, narrative structure, and I found one that I created myself that is much more flexible for what I want to do with each scene or each arc or each, whatever I want to do with the story in question. Now, for those that are studying for your next campaign for TTRPG, if you're trying to write your next short story, a scene, or even an entire series to prep for that, make sure that your prep work is done first. At least you have some kind of ideas for which characters you want and where the world takes place. So for me, I begin with character design. Now, it depends on the project, but I always begin with character design because I feel like it helps me get into the story more. If there's a believable antagonist, for example, that will then, provide me some kind of way into the story that's compelling, that's interesting, and kind of seeing how this world operates, the character is how I want to do that. If I want this to feel much more like a National Geographic special that is very in depth in the world and how things work, the sciences, the biosphere, anything of that creative nature, I typically will start from the world and work my way out. If it's a very story-driven process, I start characters first and then work my way back out to the world. For your protagonist, I want to recommend a couple points. There are 4 central pillars that I like to use when you're designing your characters. This could be an NPC. This could be your villain. This could be your protagonist if you're writing a novel for yourself. You want to decide on the character's goal, the flaw, their tactics, and their change. Now, over the course of a given story arc, one scene, you may not see a whole lot of change in their life, right? But over the course of a story, the idea is that that change becomes much more evident as we put them in situations that challenge them. So our first pillar with character design is the goal. So what the character wants over the course of the story. That could be for one scene. If the character stops by, if the scene takes place in a coffee shop, the character wants to pick up a raisin bun. No one eats raisin buns, by the way, but that's this character because it's off the top of my head. And a coffee, right? So that's the point of the scene. That's the desire. But what's the desire outside of the coffee shop? Do I want to get that raise? Do I want to get with that girl? Is the reason I'm here trying to get attention of this young lady, right? The long-term goal might be just to be happy, to have a successful relationship, to be fulfilled in some way. Oftentimes, your goals are the most compelling when they're written as, I want you to fill in the blank. Could be, I want you to give me support. I want you to love me. I want you to, it has to be a compelling way to get the other characters to give you what you desire. Why? It creates inherent dynamics, inherent tactics to how you are going about the scene. That works as a DM and as an author. Now, that's just goal. That's just the first thing here. You can make little tiny goals for one scene or big overarching goals for your entire narrative. It's up to you. The flaw. This is the thing that directly prevents the protagonist from progressing in their goal. So for our example, we said we had a guy that wants to go into the coffee shop. He's trying to order himself a coffee and a raisin bun that no one else is going to eat. But he's trying to, his ultimate goal is to try and get the attention and affection of this young lady that he sees at the cafe. What would be something that directly prevents him from progressing in that? Maybe it's a language barrier. Does he not speak English? Maybe it's a speech impediment. Maybe it's a mental health challenge. Maybe it's any number of cultural things, any number of physical things, any number of emotional things. If the person is just super anxious and nervous about talking to girls, right? Any one of those directly prevents the protagonist from progressing. And that flaw, that character flaw, is not necessarily a mark on whether or not this is a good person, because each one of us has character flaws. Those do not dictate whether or not we are a good person, right? They dictate things that we would like to improve upon, or things that are preventing us from progressing how we would like to. That's how I'm going to coin that. So those are the flaws. The tactics now. How does the character in question, whether it's a scene or whether it's the entire narrative, how does that character go about getting their desired goal. This is a tactic that is unique to this character. Let's say that our coffee shop boy who has a speech impediment, let's say, wants to get the attention of this girl. How would he, in his own way, get her attention? Now, you think about this, the complications in that are pretty astounding really quick. If they were to write their number down and slip it to the girl as he brings her order, because he's paid attention and knows that that's what she likes and that's probably going to her. If he has severe anxiety, like how does that factor into this? So we have to learn very quickly how we're going to get into this. Maybe this character, because he's socially awkward, will just walk up and say thank you when he hears the girl's name called, grabs it, quickly writes his phone number, and then gives it to her. Oh, sorry, this was yours. My apologies, and walk away. Makes it kind of quirky, makes it kind of interesting to follow for a narrative. For TTRPG, you can do a couple different things. You can do like perception checks for the characters that are player characters. Perhaps the NPC is crushing on a player character and they're trying to get their attention. That's when you, as a DM, can introduce perception checks. You can start to learn more about this character and see what it is that they're going for. Again, that depends on the campaign. If that's just not your jive, then don't worry about it. This is one situation, but I feel like it's easily applicable and customizable depending on what you want to do with your story. Any questions from the Discord thus far?
No, that's all pretty straightforward, I would like to say.
Cool.
I think it's solid.
Awesome. Last thing for characters, and then we're going to switch over to challenging this protagonist of ours, this character of ours. Last thing for creating an interesting character is the change. How do you want this character to change by the end of this interaction? This scene, this interaction in TTRPG, the character's change could mean that they are a little bit more confident. Maybe with our character at the coffee shop, he gains confidence enough to be able to talk to this girl for real. Maybe consistently he leaves little notes underneath the coffee cup when he drops it off to her, or something like that, something of that nature that's quirky, that's fun, it's flirty. But by the end, we start to see that he's getting more confident over time. But what kind of things can we do to challenge this character? What kind of things can we do as a storyteller to challenge that particular character, whether it's our protagonist or an NPC in a campaign? I think that one way that would be really interesting is to introduce another character. It's a very present and antagonistic form. It's not necessarily that they're out to get this character, right? It's more along the lines that they are directly opposing this other character. Now, in a romance or in a romedy, you could call it, a lot of times you see two characters that are trying to earn the affections of another character, a third character, love triangle kind of thing. You'll notice that dynamic is tried and true because it works. It's because these two characters, these outer characters, are trying to fight for the affections of this mutual friend of theirs. And I think that another character is the embodiment of what they are desiring and what their goal is. So it's a natural way to kind of bring that up. Another challenge to them would be a difficult life event. So perhaps the person's anxieties come from a bad breakup or, a bad relationship. A third idea for you is to design a specific situation, like a phobia. And if you are very careful with this, you have to be careful, especially in TTRPG, but where you're writing a book, you have to preface this in the course of the narrative before you get to this point. But you want to find something that is potentially an emotional trigger for that character. Why do I say it that way? Because in real life, we have triggers that bring about negative experiences. And I think that the most powerful forms of narrative come when we see characters that have been triggered, maybe not in that word, maybe not in that phrasing, but characters that are very driven by this goal and that are then forced or compelled out of their comfort zone, that then forces them to change and do things that they otherwise would not be able to within their comfort zone. Now, if this is a story about mental health, I don't recommend this. Don't trigger your characters. That's just not healthy, and it sets a bad precedent. But we're not really talking about emotional triggers in the course of storytelling. You're trying to find out ways to get this character to act. So as a dungeon master, and I'm not sure which of my Discord peeps that are hanging out with me have done this in the past, but they look at the backstories for their players' characters, and they find certain events, certain characters, certain things from that backstory that they then seed into the descriptions of their campaign to get these characters to bite, to catch the hook and follow that particular storyline for a while. That's what we're talking about. We're trying to get this character's attention in the course of composing their design. So, again, if you're trying to challenge this character, you're looking for another character, a difficult life event, a specific situation, or the last one, an idea, something that opposes them in some way, some idea or mentality that they have, an attitude they have. It could be a opposing argument. Maybe she doesn't like me. That's what our coffee guy might be thinking. Maybe she just doesn't like me. She's just not interested. Or it could be a lie. I'm not good enough for her. And that one hurts because we've said that to ourselves before, right? So the more real you can get with that, the more powerful it becomes. So I caution you again, if you're planning on doing something with mental health, be extremely careful with how you tread that. Don't intentionally trigger that person's mental health challenges unless that's the book that you're writing and unless that's the precedent that you have set for that narrative. Okay? You have to give people the red flags to say, okay, if you are easily triggered, don't read this book, basically. Also, that list of potential challenges to that character, if you keep that list handy, you immediately have story prompts, story hooks for however you want to go about your narrative. Oh my goodness. That is my daughter. What's up, baby? Yeah. Shh, I know, baby. I'll come out and help you. Can you go out and talk to Mama real quick? Okay. I'll be there in 2 minutes, okay? I love her. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap this up. This has been an awesome live. But what were you saying, my friend?
It's the best way to get your D&D players to go along with your plan, like the plot that you have going, is to attach your characters to that narrative.
Okay.
By including a character out of their backstory or whatever and tying them into the story in one way or another. It's the best way to get players to play along with the story that you have in mind.
I love it. Thank you. For today, I think that we're going to cut this short. We've talked a lot about character design, but I still yet have to talk about world design, which includes kind of the scale of how this particular scene affects the rest of the story. As well as the scene design, how we create antagonism, how we pull all these threads that we've written together. And then we get into writing. Anyway, guys, thanks so much. I've got to hop off and help out my fam bam, but it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Have a good one, Dale.
You as well.